Je luistert naar een nieuwe aflevering van Over Eten, de podcast voor nieuwsgierige eters en drinkers. Mijn naam is Tijn de Schacht. Welkom bij een nieuwe aflevering van Over Eten. Vandaag ga ik eigenlijk opnieuw internationaal. In LA zag ik dat recent een museum geopend werd over de Mexicaanse keuken. En mensen die mij ondertussen al een beetje kennen, of als je het nog niet zou weten, dan kan ik het wel zeggen. Ik ben een grote fan van de Mexicaanse keuken. Mijn droom is om ooit een eigen Mexicaans restaurant open te doen. En daarvoor probeer ik natuurlijk alles te leren wat ik maar kan leren over de Mexicaanse keuken. Niet alleen dat, maar ik praat er ook heel veel over. Ik klop op alle deuren die ik kan om te zeggen hoe goed de Mexicaanse keuken is. En dus leek het mij een heel leuk idee om te praten met Jimena Martin. Jimena, obviously we're not going to do this in Dutch because you're based in Los Angeles in LA. Yeah, your knowledge of Dutch is probably very, very limited, right?
Absolutely. I appreciate the language, but I'm not versed.
But we're not going to be talking about my language. We're going to be talking about Mexican cuisine. You work for the world's first museum dedicated to Mexican cuisine. But before we get into that, maybe we should talk about Mexican cuisine in general, because I keep talking to people about how good the very different Mexican cuisines are. In my opinion, there is no such thing as one Mexican cuisine. It's a collection of different things, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's 32 states in Mexico, and each state has a different way of creating beautiful food with these indigenous ingredients that are part of Mesoamerica. And some things are, people know tacos, but there's so much more than tacos, especially when you are working with the basic ingredient of corn, which is a national treasure.
The basic ingredient of corn, so that means corn is something like bread and potatoes to us Westerners.
Absolutely. Corn, there's mythology, there were gods, very unique ingredient that is the basis, a foundation of Mexican cuisine. Very nutritious as well. The ancestors were amazing in figuring out how to make corn masa, as we know, in Mexico and the United States and the world, through this amazing process called nixtamalization, where we get corn, dried corn, and then we cook it in cal. And when you cook it in cal, what it does, it takes the husk off of the corn kernel, and that releases all the nutrients within the corn. Then once it's washed and processed, then with metate, or with a corn grinder stone, it's grinded down into a masa, or if it's in a drier form, into like a flour. And with this flour or this masa, it can be created into multiple things. And I think that is the beauty of masa, that it can be transformed into various shapes. Flavors are added. And I think that's what makes masa the foundation and a unique way of presenting Mexican cuisine.
What I think is also important to mention is that Mexico is a big country. Mexico is about the size of Europe, and you wouldn't ask a Greek to make you Swedish meatballs or somebody from Ireland to do pierogi, for example. It's very similar in Mexico as well, isn't it? There's main ingredients that you will find all over the country, such as corn, but then there's regional differences that make the diversity so rich.
Absolutely. Rich, and also just the way the geography in Mexico, you can be tropical, it could be, a desert climate, and that kind of influences what is in the taco, what is in the tamal. Example, there's been a renaissance of awareness of the chinampas. The chinampas are floating gardens down by Mexico City that help support grand empires like the Aztec Empire. And these floating islands, almost the Three Sisters, where there's corn, squash, beans, and other fish and frogs that were local to the area. And as people are kind of going back, kind of full circle, I see people want to eat whole foods and kind of investigating this ancient ways and now present way of farming, they actually have like frog tamales. just using all the different herbs, the different vegetables. And again, as a protein source, there's tons of frogs. And so they will put those in the tamales compared to go someplace else, like in Jalisco, where they might use pork, or somewhere in Yucatan, they might use turkey or chicken. So it's endless.
What I like about the chinampas that you mentioned is that for people here in Belgium and Europe, when you visit, it's going to look very familiar to places in Holland because what it does, it is regaining land from the water in a way. What we did with a system called polders, they've done in a different way, but also regained place on the water to have agriculture. And when you take a little boat, if you're in Mexico City, you can take boat rides in Xochimilco between the chinampas, which is really beautiful. But at times you'll see a cow just like you would see a cow in Holland on the grass, just eating away. And it's a very ingenious way, and it shows that what we often do is romanticize the wild native, but it must have been a very advanced culture before the Spaniards arrived.
Absolutely. And even when they did arrive, again, through this process of nixtamal that's able to release and the process to be able to be pliable to be eaten. When Columbus did arrive to the Americas, they gave him corn. Problem is that he didn't have the secret how to cook it right. And so, of course, they ate, again, it's not the same corn we find in supermarkets today. It's a very different type of corn, a little hardier. And so he tried eating it. And of course, he got sick. No one could figure it out. And so eventually that became feed for in Europe. But they didn't have that one secret code way of cooking it in the proper way to be pliable and to be made into beautiful food items.
What is surprising to me is that, as you mentioned, corn is used as feed all over the world, but there's so many other products from Mexico that have traveled around the world and are no longer considered to be Mexican in a way. People always talk about vanilla, for example, from Madagascar or vanilla from Tahiti, but at the base, it is a Mexican product, isn't it?
It is. Veracruz is one of the biggest producers of vanilla. There's so many things. There's chocolate, cacao, started in Mesoamerica and exported out. The pineapple, beans, squash. Like, it's so funny. It's like, at least here in the United States, there's like the Italian squash, which is the green long one. Well, it's not Italian. It's from the Americas. It's from Mexico. So people taking ownership when not going back to the origins. And that's one thing that the Plaza Cocina is all about, kind of celebrating those indigenous ingredients that have fed Mexico and the Americas and now are celebrated in all other parts of the world.
Because people don't think about Italian food without tomatoes as Italian food, but tomatoes also come from Mexico.
Absolutely. Yeah, the tomatoes come from Mexico. And then through my studies, when the tomato did arrive to Europe, they would cut it up and open as all the little seeds inside. And they thought it was like a good thing to eat for fertility because of all those seeds. Or some other parts thought it was poisonous. The same thing with like the potato, which is another indigenous ingredient from the Americas. They didn't know what to do with it. So again, it's just through conversations, through cooking classes, engaging with the public, we really want to bring out that cultural pride in the ingredients that we're cooking with, and again, that are worldwide.
Now, let's say somebody from the 1400s in Mexico would time travel and arrive in Mexico City. Obviously, there's going to be a culture shock with cars passing by and buildings, sky rises, and all that sort of stuff. But would that person still recognize the food?
I'll probably recognize tortillas, but not maybe taste the same thing, because back in the day there were no preservatives. Everything was super fresh. And nowadays, at least here in the United States, when you pick up some tortillas from the supermarket, there's tons of preservatives and other ingredients. And so if this indigenous person were to come back and gone to the supermarket and have the option of a homemade tortilla or a store-bought tortilla, it's a night and day. it's night and day.
Absolutely. I do agree with you on that one. What I've noticed here in Europe over the past 10 years is that there's tortillerías popping up, so places that are really making corn tortillas fresh, not just adding water to the corn flour, to the masa harina, but they make it fresh, and you can taste the difference between that and the more industrial masa harina made tortillas. So for people that are interested, I will put a link in the description to show you where you can find those amazing tortillas. So you don't have to deal with shitty supermarket tortillas here in Belgium.
Yeah.
But Mexican cuisines, as we have them today, are an amalgam of a lot of influences. First of all, you have the pre-Columbian base, I would say, that forms the base of what Mexican cuisines are. And then you have influences from all over the world, starting with the Spaniards, obviously.
Yeah, so Spanish brought all kinds of things like, how we have to thank the Spanish for the quesadillas because they brought the cows to bring in the dairy. They brought in the pigs for the carnitas. They brought in so many things cattle, beef, another protein for your carne asada. So those protein elements really kind of combined and changed over like Mesoamerican cuisine to Mexican cuisine. And then besides the Spanish, we have all the other influences, both the Spanish with the Moors, where they brought in sesame seeds, anjojolí. The Moors have brought in cumin, different spices, cilantro from Asia. And like the perfect combination of world cuisine, I feel, is mole, because of all the different ingredients that are part of that are through immigration from Europe to Mexico, created this really unique cuisine. I think that's what makes it so special.
I think what is also often forgotten is that the Moorish influence on Spanish culture has been massive, because Christopher Columbus was only allowed to travel after the Spanish crown regained the whole Iberic Peninsula from the Moors, from the Muslims in the south. But they had been there for a couple of centuries. So there's a lot of influence from that side. But then also the Spaniards traveled to the other side of the world, to Asia, and started an exchange there as well. You had Manilans traveling to Mexico and bringing stuff from the Philippines as well to Mexico. So that creates something really, really rich, didn't it?
Yes, and like you think, like what is like tacos árabes, or even the al pastor, which is on a spigot and it turns with the pineapple and it's shaved down. What does that remind you of? It reminds of like a gyro.
Yeah, or shawarma.
Shawarma, exactly. So here's like a combination of both worlds of chiles that are indigenous to the Americas and Mexico, and pineapple, and then creating this crazy paste of achote, and then putting it on the pork, and then putting it on a spigot versus using lamb. Lamb is eaten, but it's not as popular as viable as pork. But here you go. It's a classic connection of like what one culture brings to another, and then how Mexican cuisine makes it its own.
I think it's very fascinating. As you said as well, mole is a very good example of a combination of different cultures, because mole, it comes from Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. There's still people speaking Nahuatl in Mexico, by the way. It's not a dead language like Latin, but it means sauce. So what people here, or maybe in the States as well, think of mole is often it's a chocolate sauce. But chocolate is just one of the many ingredients in certain types of mole, right?
Yeah, you go in Oaxaca, there's a Tierra de los Siete Moles. There's like 7 different types of moles. There are green moles, there are orange moles, there are red moles. And that depends on the spices and chiles that are used. But I think most people are more aware of the dark chocolate mole. But I think one thing we forgetting to mention too is the African influence in Mesoamerican cuisine as well. Bringing in rice, bringing in plantain, bringing in yuca. In some moles, we have bananas, we have plantains. And I think that's another community, another influence in Mexico and the Americas that food historians kind of forget. And again, through La Cocina, again, being that we are such a diverse city, to kind of bring those conversations and really celebrate the diversity that makes Mexican cuisine so special and so unique and so tasty that it is a world-class cuisine.
It is recognized as UNESCO World Heritage, so there is certain recognition. And you notice the past couple of years that big chefs have discovered Mexico. Although I don't think discover is the right word. It was there, it existed. It's just something that they've set their sights on because it's a very interesting cuisine. But why do you think that the world is falling in love with all these flavors?
I think, the flavors, I think the people is another thing. People get a chance to travel to Mexico. There's no other customer service and love of being so proud of their culture. I think that's one thing when you go visit to Mexico. But the thing is, it's just the textures, the flavors, the combinations. It's very unique. Again, with using masa, using chiles, the use of chiles, different types of chiles, the street food. If you go to Mexico City, the amazing options of street food, and then now
Not just in Mexico City, by the way. Pretty much any Mexican city will have amazing street food.
Absolutely. I was using that as a bad example. Yeah, any city, the street food is amazing. But then from these basic ingredients, the people's food now, how chefs are taking it to a different step and elevating it, not that it wasn't, but and put it in the spotlight and using, I don't want to say higher end, but making lobster or using duck or just kind of fusion and just really, really mixing it up, and also kind of being more obvious about other cultures' influences. Or for here in California and Los Angeles, we have Baja California, where we have this amazing climate in Baja. We are next to the ocean. And so, again, there's fish, there's winemaking, there's different types of cheeses that there was a Russian families that immigrated, I don't know how many years ago, and have left that tradition there. So it's just all the best of the worlds combined. And again, each state making it a little bit differently.
It is very tempting to come visit and eat my way through Mexico again, which I will be doing shortly. I'll be traveling to Mexico soon. But how did the idea for La Plaza Cocina start? Because you're based in Los Angeles. Yes, Los Angeles and California used to be part of Mexico before it was part of the United States. Are there still a lot of Mexicans, or how should I say this, pre-Mexicans, pre-Americans living in California?
People who identify, because California at one point was New Spain. And when this was New Spain, there were indigenous peoples here in Los Angeles area, the Tongva. Okay. And then obviously then it became Mexico. And then more people came up. And present day now, even though now Mexico is now, United States, there are still people in Los Angeles that identify as Tongva, their lineage, and they have their own ways of cooking and using the ingredients that are here that are native to California. Okay, so I want to honor them. We, now in any public engagement, we honor those who were here before us.
So that's one group, but then do you also have...
Oh, there's multiple groups. There's a Chumash, there's all these different types of folks that were here in this, in California, but we're from Los Angeles, just to keep it simple. It was the Tongva folks here. So those folks are still happening here.
So that's the indigenous people on one hand, but then you also had, people that were probably identifying as Mexican when it was Mexico.
Pobladores. Yeah, the pobladores. When the pobladores came, they were Spanish citizens, but of mestizaje descent. because they were from Sonora.
Yeah, you
And
have to explain the mestizaje thing
I'm
because a
sorry,
lot
yeah,
of people will not understand what that is.
mestizaje, thank you. Mestizaje is combining culture. So we have the indigenous folks of Mexico, we have the African descendants, and then we also have the Spanish. And then we can go into a whole other conversation of casta, of just how the Spanish identified folks of mixed races. And so just to put a blanket over everybody is mestizaje, so mestizos. So again, this mixed community came up to Los Angeles and founded Los Angeles. And then again, once this was Mexico, they opened up the borders. We had people coming in from Chile, from France, all different parts of Italy. And so I think LA has a different type of cuisine as well, because all these different influence of people who came here to acquire land. Downtown LA, our first church there, it's a Catholic church. Wine is a big part of the rituals and ceremonies. So guess what? We needed vineyards. So we actually, downtown Los Angeles was the first, we had vineyards. So we had wine before Sonoma and Napa, just to give an idea of just the combination and complex stories that is Los Angeles. But back to La Plaza Cultura y Artes. Cultura includes history, poetry, literature, movies, films. And so we're housed in two buildings from the 1880s. And obviously cuisine is a part of culture. But since we are in these two buildings from the 1880s, codes did not allow us to have a proper kitchen. So it's always on the back burner. So we're a county facility, and across the street where there's a parking lot, we were able to acquire that space, create a multi-purpose use building where the bottoms are restaurants, storefronts, and then on top are apartment buildings. So we were able to acquire one of the spaces there, and we just opened up in February, and it's called La Plaza Cocina. So it's an extension of our museum. And our museum focuses on telling the story, the founder's story through the Mexican-American Latino lens. And that's where they talk about that intricate story about the Tongva and the Spanish and the pobladores. So that's kind of the history of the founding. But then across the street, we can tell those stories, beginning with indigenous voices as well, but then celebrating Mexican cuisine as a whole.
I think it's surprising that it happened in LA and not, for example, in Mexico. Why do you think that is? Why is it that nobody thought of having a museum dedicated to Mexican food in, let's say, Mexico City?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know in Mexico they have the Museo del Cacao, the chocolate museum. But I don't know. I think sometimes folks that are outside of the country really need to be even more Mexican, bring it more since it's so far away. And Los Angeles is a huge, migration has always been a part of the conversation of Los Angeles, closest neighbor, inhabitants. And how fortunate are we that our leadership made it possible to provide that space. And also it's a sense of pride. Los Angeles, the biggest Latino population in Los Angeles is of Mexican descent. And it's a great way to tell that story through, it's a small and mighty space. We have an exhibition space, and then we have a teaching kitchen space that we'll be offering in May, cooking classes. I think it's a way of promoting, Mexican pride, Mexican cuisine, a place to recreate those recipes, and a place to bring in family and create new memories, creating, recipes from the grandmothers or something you never really tried. I think we watch a lot of Food Network, and here's an opportunity to go in and kind of really celebrate Mexican culture in a very unique way and space.
When I traveled the world for my job in the past, I've always been lucky that I got to come back home, and one of the biggest pleasures I had was to go home to mom and have her food again. A lot of the Latinos in the United States are migrants, or people that left their homes and their families behind to go work. Do you think it's a way for them to connect with their roots or reconnect with their roots in a certain way through food?
Absolutely. People travel, and so do recipes. So here's a chance for us to look for those recipes and be able to recreate that in a safe environment, celebrating culture. I'm planning on doing multi-generational classes where like a mom and the kid or the grandmother and the niece can come work together. But it's a way of recreating um, memories.
I think it's interesting that food is considered to be a part of culture, but when it comes to museums, food is always last, even though food is the first thing we do. You don't need to be able to read or write or be able to hold a tune to be able to cook, because you need to feed yourself first and foremost before you can do anything else. Why is it always last when it comes to museums, and how it is considered as part of culture?
I don't know. I think it should be the first. I think, for us to engage in other cultures, we start off with condiments, little tasting of things before you really dive in. And I'm just so happy that our team really brought it forward to really show the importance, because then I think with food, we break down barriers. We learn a lot. Who doesn't like to eat? And it's just an appreciation of this cuisine that's so Los Angeles.
And global, I would say these days. It's much more than just Los Angeles, isn't it? I mean, you're talking to
Yes,
me. I'm based in Belgium. I'm really excited that there is a museum dedicated to Mexican cuisine now. So it is a global thing.
absolutely global. Like I said, I'm so in it. We just opened up. I've been so Los Angeles, so about the space, And again, thank you so much for including us as part of your podcast series. Absolutely, it's global. You can get Mexican food anywhere. I was in Greece. I was in Paris. I was with my daughter. We're like, oh, there's only so much duck and steak you can eat and butter. I'm like, let's go find some Mexican food. And luckily, we found this little place in the Marais, Shalam, and it was delicious. And I had to ask her, how did you get here? And who makes your tortillas? So it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I just think, how fortunate are we in Los Angeles, at least to be able to have this specific spot, so people can learn more. One thing is eating. Well, another big component is to learn the history, and the hands that make cuisine, farm to table. That's a big thing too in our space. The importance of the folks that labor these fruits and vegetables, and also how they come to our tables.
I love how you said that. It's something that connects, because I remember the first time I went to Mexico City. That was back in 2010. I did not speak a word of Spanish back then. I speak a few now, but not great. But I remember going out on the street at night and seeing a taquero, and I had this food, and I remember everyone around the puesto, the stall. We had a connection because we understood that what we were having was special, was amazing, was delicious. Even though we didn't understand each other, we understood each other on a human level. Good food is good food, and it connects. While at the same time, though, you also mentioned Food Network. I remember there was this show on Food Network where chefs battle each other years ago, and at one point, Chef Rick Bayless, also known for his Mexican cuisine up in Chicago, was a judge or a guest judge on the show, and he wanted to level it up, bring it to a fine dining experience, Mexican food. And one of the contestants said, "Mexican food isn't fine dining and never will be." So in a way, isn't food also used as something to exclude, not just to include? It started in Spanish times, where corn wasn't good enough for the Spaniards, but it's been kept
Yeah,
up over the years as well. Is that still a thing these days?
that makes me sad that he thought that. Well, I know, like in the exhibition, we do have a collection of cookbooks, and we show that's kind of storyline. Where one of the first books, about 1883, is the first mention of corn. Prior to that, it was wheat was the grain of choice. And then with the weather there, it was, maybe in Sonora, there's Sonora where they do, is there where you find flour tortillas. But the rest of the nation is corn, and how it became the people's food. It's still the people's food, but then it became elevated. Now we have these master chefs, Enrique Oliveras, one of the best restaurants, 12 spot, impossible to get a reservation for. And his food is obviously celebrating corn and the indigenous ingredients.
So a very big change from years ago, obviously.
Absolutely. And then I think it's a global awareness as people are getting more food conscious and know what they know in regards to these amazing ingredients. It can be so simple, cheese, beans, corn, squash, chiles, but combined together with other things from different parts of the world, really make it a world-class, unique cuisine.
I agree 100%. The future of La Cocina, you just opened. You just started with your first exhibition, and that is very much the basis of Mexican food, isn't it? It's an exhibition about maize, corn, as we know it.
Yes, it's maize, past and present. So it's a very small space where we talk about the mythology and the corn gods. Then we transition with this beautiful papel picado. Again, one of the threads in the exhibition is the hands. So in that papel picado, you see corn being grinded, a tortilla being made, a tortilla being placed on a comal. A comal is like a specific type of pan that's used to grill vegetables, chiles and stuff, but also primarily to cook your corn. Then we talk about the history of nixtamal, the process.
Just for the people that don't know, papel picado is like the beautifully cut out paper flags that you often see in Mexican restaurants and in Mexico itself as well.
Yeah, this is an intricate papel picado. It is, again, with faces of corn gods, these hands and corn, beautifully cut and elaborated. It is like 36 by 24 inches. It's this huge papel picado. And then we had a space here in Los Angeles called the Annenberg Space of Photography. Sadly, during COVID, it closed down, but I was always in love with the photographs. Photographs can tell a story. So the rest of the exhibition is these beautiful blown up photographs of people in the process, making hands, the farmers, the actual beautiful multiple, corn is not just yellow or white. They come in purple, red, pinkish. And so we have a display as well showing the varietals of corn. And then the last end, we talk about farming. Again, the chinampas that I mentioned earlier, and the milpa. The milpa, again, is like the three sisters where things grow together. That's corn,
the milpa
squash,
is a farming system that you will find all over Mexico that's been started in pre-Columbian times. And the three sisters that you're referring to are three different types of plants that grow together and sustain each other, isn't it?
Exactly. And they sustain themselves with the lighting and the soil and seasonal.
So the three sisters, for the people that are interested, first of all, you have corn, then you have beans and squash. And I think the corn provides the support for the beans to grow upwards. And either the squash or the bean provides enough nutrients to the soil so the others can grow well, and they repel insects from each other. Something like that, isn't it?
You said it perfectly. Yes, it's like the great way of mixing all worlds to create this seasonal way of planting. And then in addition to that, we have items that were brought in from Oaxaca. We have a desgranador. It's dried corn cobs in a circle put together. And when you get the dried corn cob, you rub up against it and then all the kernels fall off. We have a pichancha, which is a Mesoamerican colander. We also have a metate, which is the original corn grinder to grind the corn. And then another group that we worked with in Los Angeles is it's a stone. It's a grinding stone. And this grinding stone came via Kernel of Truth. They're a group of young men in Boyle Heights, that actually are bringing back the tradition of cooking the corn and the cal in huge vats and making these GMO-free American organic corn tortillas. So they're bringing that back. Here's these, 30-year-old guys bringing that style back, and we were fortunate to have one of their grinding stones. Another group that we worked with that provided these beautiful photographs is Hacienda Corn. They actually work with the indigenous farmers in Mexico and protect the heirloom corn against Monsanto. So big purveyors, big supporters, and they were kind to let us borrow these beautiful photographs for the exhibition. So corn is to start off. And then every 6 months, we'll be switching out the exhibition, telling a different story. The next one coming up for Mother's Day is called Voces de las Abuelas. We're working with Sarah Portnoy from USC and her group of students. They interviewed 10 grandmothers. So we have indigenous grandmothers, Mexican grandmothers, and Mexican-American grandmothers, and just telling their story of immigration, cooking, and again, who doesn't love their abuelitas? Who doesn't love their grandmothers cooking? So this is an amazing way of documenting those stories and how they immigrated to Los Angeles.
I think the biggest discussion in the world you'll have is whose grandmother makes the best food. Is it yours or mine?
So that's the next exhibition. And so again, we're going to use beautiful photography, and all these interviews were also filmed and they're being made into a documentary as well. So we'll be showing snippets in the gallery space, but my understanding it is going to be its own documentary later on down the road.
And then cooking classes, that's a big part of the space as well. How's that going to go about?
Like I said, we are still La Plaza Cocina, and two buildings from the 1880s. We have conference rooms. And so for the past 10 years, we were able to have amazing pop-up cooking classes. Okay, we did everything from filleting fish, frying, all kinds of crazy stuff. So now that we're here in a proper kitchen, and the other, besides having a teaching kitchen in the space with these beautiful 8 burners, a grill, the centerpiece of the space is a comal. Again, I was saying the comal is like this circular, this is not stainless steel, cast iron, round griddle. That's the word, like griddle. And there's no other place that I know that has a teaching comal griddle. So every single class that there's anything to do with corn, we're going to have the students participate and make their own tortillas. With masa, there's more you can do. They can do memelas, tetelas, huarachis, gorditas, all these different things made out of masa. But then again, be able to use this amazing teaching opportunity with a comal. And you're right next to the exhibition space. So it's all together. So the difference with La Cocina, La Plaza Cocina is, besides having the opportunity to hands-on learning, it's also oral history. It's also knowledge, education. I come from museum education for the past 30 plus years. And I think it's so important for people to walk away where these things come from, the regional cuisine, maybe how to say it in Nahuatl. Or how to say in Zapotec, if you are from, we do a Oaxacan cuisine. Language is huge too. We plan out for bilingual classes in Spanish, but so all that in this very unique, beautiful space that I'm so proud as a team came together. Co-curator Maite Gomez Rejon of Art Bites. And also the leadership of La Plaza Cultura y Artes to be able to be forward thinking and really make the space happen.
It sounds very promising. You've mentioned cookbooks before as part of the exhibition. Is it going to become a collection like you would find in, for example, the University of Texas in San Antonio, where they have thousands of books, or is that just part of the exhibition itself and not necessarily a goal in and of itself to become cookbook collectors?
La Plaza, we are a non-collecting organization. We just, where the 1880s, we don't have the facilities for climate control and all those kinds of things. When we can, we will exhibit cookbooks to admire. I'm a big cookbook collector myself.
Because you have a very special book in the museum right now, don't you?
Yes, and it's actually my copy. It's La Cocineros. Off the top of my head, I can't recall. I'm a little nervous. But again, it's like the dictionary
De
of
nuevo cocinero en forma de diccionario.
ese. A while back ago, I gifted myself that book. I found it and I gifted it and I bought it, and it's just my treasure. And then again, through this conversation of corn, bringing awareness of when it showed up in cookbooks to the happening, to the modern day beautiful tabletop cookbooks. But we may not have those for forever, but we do have a beautiful La Tiendita. La Tiendita is a little store where we have hand-picked cookbooks. And for me, it's very important. In Los Angeles used to be a cookbook store where you can walk in, hey, I'm just learning how to bake. I want to learn to make conchas, these little Mexican pastries. Oh, we got you. Look, we walk you over here. This is a beginner's book. And then, then as you go on. So everything was handcrafted. And I think with the internet and buying books online, we've kind of lost that touch. So the bookstore itself is at the end of the store is curated itself, where a variety of books and the staff that work there are very much in tune with what each cookbook brings. So if you come in as a novice, we'll be more than happy to inform you like which books would work for you best, or do suggestions of where you are. In addition to the cookbooks, we also have beautiful kitchen items, aprons from Oaxaca, from artisans here in Los Angeles, these beautiful table runners, just everything you can think about that you would want in your kitchen, again, celebrating Mexican cuisine.
It sounds amazing. It sounds like it's a place I have to come visit when I go to Los Angeles. It's a no-brainer for me. I will visit, just don't know when yet.
Well, when you do, please let us know. We are in tune with all the local best up-and-coming new restaurants in Los Angeles. And there's a little bit of everything, different regional cuisine here to celebrate. So we'd love to take you out to Los Angeles.
When I lived in Texas, I was always amazed by the diversity that was available, because there's more diversity in Mexican food to be found in Texas or Los Angeles, I would say, than there is in Mexico itself, because there's more migrants from all over the country in one place, which gives you a smorgasbord to choose from, which is also a different cultural influence from Europe. The word smorgasbord.
We actually have a smorgasbord on Sundays in the Arts District. It's called Smorgasbord, and then you can find different vendors, a lot of Mexican food vendors, all in one shop, one-stop shop, and eat.
That is definitely high on my list to visit when I come to LA. I just don't know when it will happen, because time is always limited. They don't give me enough time off to do all the things I want to do at work. But I'll make do, and I will come visit. That's for sure. If people want to find out more about what's going on in La Plaza Cocina, where can they go?
Right now, we're finalizing our official La Plaza Cocina website. However, we do have La Plaza LA Instagram, and we also have La Plaza LA on Facebook. And they can also find our website at www.lapca.org. This week, again, we just opened up, we're finalizing, and then once that's ready, then there'll be links to our official La Plaza Cocina website, where you can find information on exhibitions. Actually, this corn exhibition will be online forever. We did like a virtual tour of the exhibition, so it stands there forever. And also up and coming in May, the listing of a variety of classes celebrating all the different. I'm so excited. There's just so many options and so many. Just one thing, the LA chefs, cocineras, food folks in Los Angeles have been so generous and so supportive. So I cannot wait to showcase their talents and their work. But for those who happen to be in Los Angeles, April 10, we have our grand opening. It's at Tardeada. It's an afternoon event from 12 to 4, where we'll be having 3 chef demos, tastings, some wine from Valle de Guadalupe, little tamales to be passed out, and have folks, and it's absolutely free. We're going to have a blessing with some dancers, and invite folks to come visit our little store, see the exhibition, and sign up for the cooking classes.
Well, I'm looking forward to visiting the museum virtually to begin with. I'm going to keep an eye on the website and see if there's new exhibits popping up virtually as well. I think that's a great gift to the rest of us who are not in LA and who don't have the chance to pop around the corner every other weekend, so to speak. And I'm looking very much forward to visiting soon.
We look forward. I hope you come to Los Angeles. A lot going on. The food. Now that our doors are opening up, new restaurants are popping up. New young chefs are popping up. It's Los Angeles coming alive again.
That's great to hear. I wouldn't want to see it dead.
No, but even more people who've been hibernating these past 2 years are coming out on fire to showcase their food and again, be part of the community again.
Exciting times. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time for this. And as I said, people that are interested in finding out more, you can just find all the links in the show notes. And if you're not able to make it to Los Angeles, just visit, discover what Mexican food can be, discover the story of maize, corn, the whatever way you want to call it. And hopefully you'll dig into some delicious Mexican food soon.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so honored that you invited me on. And again, if you're in Los Angeles, please look us up. Be happy to give you a tour of la Plaza Cocina and la Cocina. And again, muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much.
De nada. You're welcome. Bedankt om te luisteren naar Over Eten. Vond je het een leuke aflevering? Deel deze podcast dan zeker met andere foodies. Tag me gerust op Facebook of Instagram via @overetenpodcast. Honger naar meer? Dat is mijn maandelijkse nieuwsbrief vol eet, drink en luisterplezier. Schrijf je in via de website, dat is www.overetenpodcast.be. Bedankt en hopelijk tot binnenkort.